Hi there. Welcome to the Modern Day Shaman podcast. This is episode 5, Grounding into the Third Dimension and Beyond. And this is Pavan, and I am here today with Betty G, my co-host.
Nice to be here.
So, we are not necessarily dimensional experts by any means, but we have some knowledge of the different dimensions. And today we particularly wanted to delve into what dimension we're in right now, where we're headed, what exactly that means, tools that can help us in the transition. And it's absolutely connected to shamanism as well. So this is a pretty exciting topic. Um, the third dimension, I guess we can start with that, and that is where our physical bodies are. It's the earth plane. It's also the dimension of the earth. And so we're starting here with grounding into the 3D and the importance. And in prior episodes, we've talked about the earth and the elements and the importance of the connection here, really humanity's connection to the earth. And for shamans, right, going back to nearly the beginning of time, this was like, I'm going to say, an interconnection. There was no separation between us, the earth, the flora, the fauna. And now we have, I would say, a perceived separation of things. And so there, to some extent, feels like we're going back to these tools and techniques that we have had throughout all of time to really highlight the interconnection, to enhance it, and to support the earth. This feels like, really, I'm feeling the emotion of it too, just like talking about it. I mean, it feels like it's the year of the earth, and not even just the year, but that should really be at the forefront. So the importance of kind of making this connection and maybe the possibilities around seeing and experiencing our life in this way feel very personally important to me.
I think I just got a report on my screen time yesterday, and it sometimes just blows my mind how much time I'm actually on my phone or on a computer or an iPad or using them in everyday life, how we have to do it when we go for a doctor appointment or something. And I think that my first instinct in the morning or my first action is to grab my phone. I look at the time because I don't have a clock. So I look at the time. And then sometimes I get caught up in the technology. And I'm watching other people in nature going out and walking by a lake and walking their dog.
Right.
And I'm not doing it. And I think one of the key things is discipline and allowing yourself the time to use these technologies, but then knowing when to call it. Like with a child, you say, okay, you've had enough time on that game or whatever. We need to do that as adults. People walk along the street walking their dog and they don't look at the dog, they just look at their phone. And I think, put your phone in your pocket and look at the sun and look at the trees and enjoy your dog. You don't just drag your dog along the street. So we need to connect with nature on a daily basis, even if it's just for a few minutes of letting the sun go into our eyes and um, the feeling the things that are outside, like I talked about before. There's no ego in nature. So when we go outside, we can observe the birds, the squirrels, the rabbits, whatever you happen to see, and just think about them and think about how they live. And they don't have phones and they don't have computers, and they've been living on this planet with us for years, for as long as we've been here. So we're connected to the core of the earth. And then coming forward, the metallic critters and the magma and everything on right under the surface of the earth. There's a lot of things there that are necessary to the function of the earth. But when you're on top of it, like we are, we're above the crust of the earth. All these creatures and all of these processes are going on around us. And we need to honor that. We need to honor Gaia in her shift. And I've been talking about this for a couple of years now, that we are being recalibrated to handle what the earth energy is changing to. So as the solar flares come in and the proton belt we're going through hits the earth, that energy has to be processed. And through ceremony, dance, singing, drumming, anything that feels good to you. And you'll notice if you go out and do that outside, how the animals enjoy watching you. It's like
Right.
you're one of them. You're one of them, and you have your own way of expressing yourself instead of having an electronic instrument with you. So I just urge everybody to think about, get out into nature and pick up trash when you're at the beach. Take a bag with you and pick up trash and take it off the beach. Don't let it go into the ocean. Just think about this planet, because I don't know where everybody else is going to be, but I want to be here. you know.
Yeah. Well, and like you were saying, before we hopped on here, and I think that this is really important, is the 3D, the third dimension is the earth plane, and that's where our physical bodies exist. And we want to honor the earth, and we also want to recognize our bodies are the earth. We come from the earth. And
And we
we're
go
going
back
to head in this direction and talk about this more. But as we transition into the fourth dimension and the fifth dimension, the earth is in transition from the third to the fourth dimension. For us, our physical body exists in the third dimension, but it's our consciousness that moves into the fourth and fifth. And again, we'll go into it a little bit deeper, but just starting here, many of us and some of you tuning in, right, may love to go off into the ethers. And, I do these journeys and meditations and connect in these other dimensions. But concurrently with that, we need to do what you're saying and be grounded in this life experience. So, yes, we have access to these other dimensions while we're here, but we're here with the planet. And it's really important to, like you said, listen to her, to acknowledge what's going on, and really to tune in a way where we can be stewards of the earth and we can support this transition and also get support for ourselves in the transition. And we'll talk about that. But there is this as within, so without, which I feel like we probably discuss that every time, but it is a shamanic concept, but it's also a basic concept in the sense of, okay, let's look at what's happening, on the earth right now. And then how are we feeling personally in terms of like chaos, or what's going on in the human collective, and how is that playing out? And, for anyone in any given time, it looks different, right? You might be celebrating a wedding or going to a funeral is kind of one of those ways of, we're all in our personal experience in a different place, but collectively we have a pulse on the energy is chaotic right now. And it's connected to the energy of the earth. And what's really important, I guess, in my kind of talking around this is to walk with her and to be in this healing space with her, and to recognize we're not separate. It's not like, oh, I'm going to just stay in my house on my phone and pretend that there's this separation between me and what's happening out there. Betty's in California, where the winds have been bad for a long time, and there's been all of the devastating fires, and we've had a lot of natural disasters lately. And it's like, how do we evolve within this and
Well, and
really
it
listen?
really gets your attention.
Yeah.
It's this close, and things that I've been looking at for my entire life are gone.
Yeah.
Landmarks and memories. I know every inch of Pacific Coast Highway, and I drove it so many years and so many times, looking out at the ocean, stopping along the way and going for a walk on the beach, watching the whales and the dolphins, and then it's devastated. It burned right down to the water. And things that I looked at my whole life that I just thought would always be there are gone. And we just don't realize that this is Gaia's way of telling us that we are out of balance. The earth is out of balance, and we are able to do things and what this entire dimensional alchemization is about is us helping the earth
Yes.
do this and helping it shift because it does it anyway, but we aren't used to watching it happen. We're not
Yeah.
used to experiencing it, but we have to pay attention, and we have not been paying attention. This
Mm-hmm.
gets your attention when you see
Right.
these people lost their homes that they've lived in for years and had this beautiful view and such a beautiful place. And now it looks like a bomb went off here. It
Mm-hmm.
just looks literally like the Ukraine, like it's decimated. And it really puts things into perspective because if you have all that beauty and all of that um, support from a beautiful planet like this, we have to pay attention to these elements. We have to pay attention to the weather. We have to honor the directions. We have to honor the seasons, like we talked about
Yeah.
on camera. We have to get in touch with what we can do to awaken the people. The people have to wake up. So everything that one person does, it can ripple, it can go through and have an effect on others thinking. And then maybe their actions will follow because if we don't spread the word or if we don't make it heard, then some people are just oblivious. They're not going to care about it. They're not going to hear about it. They're not going to see it until they see the aftermath like this.
Mm-hmm.
And we take everything for granted. And I've said this before, we can't take this for granted. We have to
Right.
help this planet evolve.
I mean, she's a living being,
Yeah,
and
it's just like one of us. We are part of her. We're along for the ride.
right. It feels like right now there's a cleansing process happening. And yeah, there is to some extent like, hey, do we want to be here along for the ride or not?
Yeah. It wouldn't take very much to just wipe out humanity. I mean, if the ecology is that unbalanced, and we've
Right.
talked about the weather patterns and climate change and all of the things that are happening to the ocean, it just breaks my heart because I remember Jacques Cousteau said the ocean will never die. She'll replenish herself. And well, leave it to people, to humans to screw it up.
Yeah. I
They're
mean, the,
putting plastic in the ocean and it's almost impossible to cleanse it now. And this is not just one person. This is a huge mass of
well, and
plastic.
I think there's something to choosing to be kind of turning a blind eye or choosing to be less conscious versus it's different if you're in like a survival type place or something, but those choices have a collective impact just like on the other side, like you're saying, everything that each person does has a ripple effect, and so it can be a beautiful ripple effect. And in terms of the dimensions, it also feels like there's a collective tipping point. So for the earth in this transition from 3D to 4D, and then humanity is kind of in different spaces, but if it's moving from the fourth to the fifth and you're moving your consciousness there, as more people move their consciousness fully to the fourth dimension or fully to the fifth dimension, then there becomes this tipping point where when we were talking about this, the outcome and the timelines change.
Mhm.
So there is an element of what are we choosing? What do we want to experience? Not just for us, but obviously for future generations. And I'll even say for our future selves. Many
Yeah.
of us, even if we don't think so, are going to come back if this is a planet we can come back to many times. So are we choosing, what are
Well,
we
I say
choosing
I
to come
say
back
this
to?
jokingly. I've said this for years. No matter where you go, there you are.
Yeah, right.
And if you come back and you're like, "Oh, I should have taken better care of this planet. It's kind of messed up."
Yeah, yeah,
And seeing that and having people have the attitude that somebody else will take care of that. Somebody else will do that. I don't have to
right.
do that. Someone else will catch that. If we all did just a little bit more of being cognizant of the fact that this is not going to last forever. This is not a movie set that someone created and we're just going to step onto it every time we want to play this game. we have to do ceremony. We have to do rituals. We have to, and we
Yes.
talked about this. This was a
Yes.
very important part of bringing this podcast forward.
Mm-hmm.
We have to get people to participate in changing the collective consciousness to a positive one. You know,
So,
it has to be like, I think they said like 3 people meditating can change 1,000 people.
right.
It doesn't take very much positive energy to negate the negative, to get rid of the negative and to bring it to a positive place. So every time you can do something good, and I emphasize this too, you know, be kind, be helpful, and do the right thing. Take a few minutes, you know, and do the right thing. Whatever you have to do to help someone or something, an animal or whatever. And don't think of yourself, you know, think of how it's going to impact everything.
Yes.
Because we're to the point now where we can't look the other way. We can't ignore it.
And I think that it's really important to take the actions, like you're saying, every day and in real time as they present themselves to do what's kind and to do what's right. And also the healing and the ceremony that comes back to the shamanic piece, which we are bringing forward more and more in modern day. And I think that we don't always realize how powerful we are. And we can look at it from different angles, but from a positive, context, like you're saying, 3 people meditating together, that has the ripple effect to touch 1,000 people. Well, yes, help an animal and pick up the trash and every single thing that comes up throughout the day, but also set aside time for ritual and ceremony that connects with healing the earth and healing ourselves. Again, it's interconnected. So this is something that we're going to get into a little bit more around, it comes up into like, what can we do? Well, this is energy healing work, really, but um ceremonies going back to the beginning of time, honoring the elements, for example, then you see, and also same with the flora and fauna, if you're having a ceremony outside, you will see how the elements and how the flora and fauna are woven into your ceremony and taking part. And that's really incredible. So, even say you get to a part of the ceremony and you're calling upon a water element and it just starts to rain. You're in a different, I'm going to say, dimension and a different vibration when you tap into that than when all of your energy is in the 3D. So I want to keep this simple, but it is through ceremony and ritual. That is one of the ways that we move into the 4th dimension and the 5th dimension, and we can draw upon healing in those dimensions and bring them into this space.
And
And
all
what you see is
making all,
magical.
we talked about altars, even one that you can sit in,
Yes.
like
Yes.
a small hut or something where you can put your body in there and you can be in an altar with things around you that honor that particular thing that you're trying to accomplish. Like you can bring natural things in there and you can ask those, because the elementals in the 2nd dimension, they watch over that dimension. It's like they source the 3rd dimension where we
Mhm.
are.
Yes.
So, some people don't believe in elementals. I see them all the time. And those, when you're talking about,
And
ask
that
their help.
What's interesting about that is you're psychic and you're tuned into the 4th and 5th dimensions and even the 2nd dimension. So you might literally be seeing it, or you might be seeing it in your 3rd eye. But because somebody doesn't see it, does not mean it isn't there, right? Like what we're seeing, generally speaking, without these other aspects, is in the 3D. But there's beings living on the earth in the 4th dimension and 5th dimension, for example, that we can't see when we're tuned into this dimension.
Right. And when you go into the 4th dimension, everything is split automatically. The duality is right in your face. Like from our dimension, we have a lot of polarization and duality. But when in the 4th dimension, you cannot leave the fourth dimension without resolving an issue. If something splits and you need to balance it, or you need to have a recognition of yin and yang, like the balance, you cannot just be tossed around in there. If you take your third dimensional being into the fourth dimension and you don't resolve the issues that you're there to resolve, you're just going to be bouncing around like in a tumbler. You're just going to be
Right.
like a clothes dryer, like you're a wash rag, and you're just going to be bounced around in there. And it's very difficult to step back into the third dimension and have your head on straight, because we are picking up the emotions and the thoughts of the collective. So everyone's thoughts, good or bad, right or wrong, whatever we want to do the duality thing, those are all in there. And we have to be able to sort them out. We have to be able to resolve things and then step back into the third dimension.
What's
So,
interesting is it's noisy and there's chaos, and the duality piece really does create that space where there's a lot of lessons to be learned. But then it's also, um, what am I wanting to like ground here around this? It's like the fifth dimension, for example, there's no fear in that space. What I was going to say is the fourth dimension is also centered around the heart space. So there's a lot of love and possibility. But it goes back to what you're saying in terms of staying grounded and, kind of like doing the hard work, like learning the lessons, seeing whatever it is that's presenting in your life, if it's a theme or a pattern, and working through it. And
yeah.
then by virtue of more deeply centering in the heart space, in the fourth dimension, as these sort of like karmas, you might say, or lessons and all of these loops, as we work through that, our consciousness then shifts into the fifth dimension. And the jury's out on how many dimensions there are. I mean, I can't even, I was going to say at least 9. And then I'm like, well, no, at least 12. Like, I think it's infinite, really. But I mean, we're not going to go into like explaining all of them much beyond these. But the fifth dimension with like no fear and being more, I'm going to say, soul centered in a way,
Heart, open heart.
open heart. So, I mean, I think most of us can say that, like, maybe we're going into it in our meditations. You can go into a meditation and have an experience of the seventh dimension. I was talking to someone recently who was there and was talking about that space. And we can go into these spaces temporarily, or kind of like maybe in a more fleeting way, at least for most of us. But shifting all the way into some of these, it's easy to know if we have or not. If you have any fear in your life, you're not anchored in the fifth dimension, for example. And so
Right.
I know I'm not fully anchored there. I can go there and experience the energy. But so that just gives a little context. But also I think the earth being connected to 3 and moving to 4, and then what you're talking about with like the duality and the yin and yang, it's more of a highlight and an underscore to do our personal work as well, because we're helping the planet make the transition. So we can help in many ways.
Well, and you can see when you're there, if you keep your head about you, if you don't get too afraid, you
Right.
because we've been traumatized,
Yes.
from 50,000 years ago, and when the Paleolithic age, when we talked about, shamanism's beginning, that was before anything else. We coming forward, we had cataclysms, we had starvation, we had ice ages, we had all these things that traumatized humans. So when we go into the fourth dimension, we can see how the collective is thinking and what their emotions are. And sometimes when people have enough love and they have enough good energy going into that, good thoughts and good emotions and enough love, they can transition to the fifth dimension more easily. They can
Yes.
sort out when those things are split, they can see what is the best thing for them and open their hearts without fear. And then
Mm-hmm.
they go into the fifth dimension and experience, and the fifth dimension is watched over by the Pleiadians. So there's a star connection there too. and it's going to be safe and it's going to be comfortable, nurturing, and people can not be traumatized anymore. They can be protected and they can be cared for and loved, and they can get past the past, so to speak. Because if you are in trauma and you're afraid all the time, it doesn't matter where you are, you're going to bring that with you. So when we see people struggling like that, it gives us a chance to maybe help them or sort it out, and not go there ourselves and not buy into all the fear and that it's going to happen again. So coming forward in the years and the timelines that we've seen, 50,000 years, so many things have happened, and people obviously are traumatized.
Right.
So to get them to a place, and by the way, when you mention scientists now have and some of the quantum, um, like theoretical physicists and people that are more open-minded, they have discovered 26 dimensions that they can
Hmm.
scientifically prove. And
Amazing,
I've
right?
gotten to 22 maybe when I, have experiences that I've had. And I know that there's more, but when they are talking about proof and people want proof, 26 is a huge number when you think about it.
Right.
But then when you bring this um, ritual and ceremony and dance and music, and I love to watch the indigenous natives dance the bear, the spirit of the bear, when they become the bear and they dance, and the earth loves that. Gaia loves that when we celebrate the animals and we honor the elements. And like I said, if you do that on a regular basis in your life, if you build altars, if you do medicine wheels or crystal grids or anything that bring that energy to your life, and then spread that, just like when people drop trash on the ground, plastic, and I see someone drop something in litter, I pick it up and run after them and say, I think you dropped something.
Yeah, you've mentioned this before. Yeah.
I think that if everybody had the nerve to do that, and if everybody would do that and say, um, I'm walking here,
Right.
and I want it to be beautiful. Do you do this in your home?
Hmm.
I've said that at work to people in the break room. Do you live like this in your home? Trash the break room. I don't want to go in there. It's filthy.
Right.
Why, why, why are you doing this? Do you live like this in your own home? Can I come there and throw my candy wrappers and my ice cream sticks on the floor? And, people don't think about how bad that is. They just walk on past it and it's behind them, So if you bring it to their attention and say, this is our home, we need to make it more beautiful. And when we leave here, we need to make it better.
Right.
We need to
Yeah.
try to make the shift that's happening a positive thing and bring that energy forward for the people that have the right idea and for the people that do care, like you and I.
Right. It's about having accountability and recognizing that the choices you make, having them be conscious choices. Sometimes there are even choices where we feel like it wasn't a choice, but when we examine it further, we can acknowledge that we still chose in that moment.
Always a choice.
There's
Yeah.
always a choice. So I would really encourage, I think we touched on this briefly in a previous podcast, but for everyone to have sacred circles. And this is something you can research much further, but I'll just share. I have one outside and I have one in this room, in this space. And so that is where I do my ritual and ceremonies, unless they're group ceremonies, which I also love to do, but at least at home, those are my two spaces. And when you create the sacred circle, it can be, maybe the circle is purely from like your inner plane, you're visualizing it, or maybe it's a circle of crystals or a circle of petrified
It's
marble.
intention is what's important.
Yes, but it's this intention is when you go into the circle, this is a space for healing and wisdom. So maybe you will sing and maybe you'll dance and maybe you'll be in meditation and you can really make it a personal, unique experience and bring in aspects that are really important to you. But know that this is always a space for healing and information. And as you come back to it, there's an energetic imprint there that you begin to feel and begins to imbue your ceremony and your ritual. In addition to that, there's been so many versions of the sacred circle since shamanism began. And it can be a really helpful tool to go even deeper into your own lessons. An example of that we touched on before we got on here is honoring the directions and the elements and bringing that in. So some consistent aspect every time you begin your ceremony or your ritual and every time you end it. You have gratitude for all of these aspects, for the elements, for the flora, for the fauna, some sort of prayer. It can be unique to you, or even a song that you sing. And then when you close, you go back to that gratitude and you're thankful for all of these aspects as well. Something simple is oftentimes, many of you probably do this or have seen this, but when people have sage and then it's in an abalone shell, that is representing all of the elements right there. So that's one simple way to bring the elements in. The smoke is the air. When you light it, that's the fire. The abalone shell represents the water and the earth, and in fact the sage as well, right? The earth aspect. So it's all there. But when I'm in a circle, I like to honor all of the directions. And we could go further into this, but the part that's coming up as most important too, and Betty, you have a good angle on this also that we were discussing, but I was sharing that for each year, it tends to be a different theme that I feel like is coming up for me to look at that is connected to each season. And so I already tuned in for this year, and it was strength, courage, authenticity, and discipline. And they follow the seasons starting with the winter. So I'm in the season of strength, and I can call upon a guide to help me with the healing and wisdom around strength in this season. And then it goes on from there. And this is just an example, but also recognizing that as you have these daily practices, again, it's for what's playing out in your life, but then it's all connected. So you're doing this for the earth and the
Well, you're
healing.
aligning yourself. You're
Yes.
aligning yourself. And that's
Yes.
what we talked about before. When you align yourself, you will change the group, the mass,
Yes.
by aligning what's wrong and what's going on in yourself. And when you do
Mhm.
these rituals and you have gratitude and you live like that, that is aligning yourself so that other things can correct in the collective. We can't individually go and tap every person's door and reach,
Right.
but when you make right inside yourself with that intention, and then it just sort of flows out into the collective. So it can't hurt to do it, even if you're alone. You don't have to have a group of people, but it is nice to do it in a group. Have a bonfire, have talking circle. There are people
Yes.
sing, they can drum, drumming circles, and that was something that I always enjoyed. It just feels indigenous. It feels like the way that the natives honored their camps. They moved from winter to summer camps, and when they left their winter camp, you could never even know that they had been there.
Right.
They
They have
didn't
no
damage
trace.
Gaia in any way. And the animals, they use every part of an animal when they kill an animal. They thank the animal for its life and what it gives them. And then when they move to their summer camp, when they leave there, there's no scars. I mean, even in my experience in my lifetime at campgrounds, when I see what people do to a campground and they leave after a holiday, it's embarrassing to be a human.
Oh,
I'm sure you've seen it.
yeah.
And you
Yeah.
think, why
Or
would we,
after fireworks. I mean,
yeah,
there's a lot of
why would we do
examples.
that? Why
Even
would,
after a farmer's market or something.
yeah. But if you make a camp, like my daughter goes camping and she has very minimal things that she takes with her, but very warm jackets and sleeping bags and a small tent, but they don't damage anything around their campsite. It's just they go into the natural habitat, for all the animals, whatever, and they make a camp, and then when they leave, everything is the same. They just take their equipment and it's all in a backpack. They
Right.
don't make it known that they were there. I'm sure the animals know that they were there, but everybody
Right.
is not insulting or molesting, I guess. In Spanish, they say no moleste, which is like don't bother the bones, or if you're digging someplace, oh, my dog's buried there, don't dig over there. It's like we don't have to make a mark on anything unless it's a positive thing. If a plant gets tipped over or it's uprooted, plant it again, put it back in the soil, do little things like that. Just, I think, being alert and being aware of what's going on around us, instead of worrying about what might happen or what's going to happen later, or what we have to, our phones. It's just insanity to me that people are into the technology so much that they forget about the beauty around them.
Right.
But again, going into the fourth dimension and finding out, what you think about what you're seeing, and tumbling around and trying to reconcile what you need to fix yourself. It's a bridge to the fifth dimension. If you get it right, then you get to go into the fifth dimension.
Yeah. Well, and also when we were touching on it before, what was coming is right as I mean, you mentioned the piece of okay, the trauma, and it's a very real thing, and this is a real shamanic piece too, that we heal and tap into this trauma that reaches all the way back past lives. It's in our DNA. It's this cellular, unconscious memory of things. And so we're not just healing when we step into our sacred circle, for example, and we come in and we have an intention for healing and wisdom, and maybe it's to have peace in my primary relationship, and you're thinking of this life and your partner in this life, and it's that example, but recognizing that how things are playing out have to do with this life. And they also have to do with past lives or this trauma that goes back. So, as we're healing that thing, we're healing backwards, we're healing forwards. And there's this piece of, well, most of us don't want to suffer, right? I mean, we acknowledge that this is a part of our experience, but this suffering is often what propels us to sort of like learn and change things and expand and move forward on our journey. And when you mentioned the fifth dimension, this is a space, like I said, of no fear, but also, like you were saying, it's unconditional love, and it's a whole different potential playing field with how you're going to navigate your experience. And if that is the space that's, governed by the Pleiades, and it's safe and all of these things, like, who doesn't want to go there? I mean, who doesn't want to work towards that? We're in this chaotic kind of, I don't even know what to call it, like swampy mishmash of things. And also, if you're listening, chances are pretty good that you're a healer yourself. And, those of us who are called to that to whatever degree or in whatever way in our lives, it's like it feels like we're the touchstones, I want to say, but also it's important to find the space. The space is not the right word, the tether that is going to take you through the chaos so you can move towards the fifth dimension, so that when people are wanting help and they're experiencing the fear, we're all human. So it's not to say that we're not going to experience it or we're not going to interface with these things, but we feel strongly and we know that we can go into our sacred circle, or we can connect with our guides, we can connect with the earth, and we can be in a space of love and healing that not only carries us through, but also offers the support that's necessary for others. It's a real thing that we're all in different places on our journey, and some could use more help than others. Some are, working through things that are, just, I mean, we all know this, right? There's so many different examples. And so for some of us, to kind of have that stronghold and to make it our mission, if that makes sense, to stay connected, um, it's really important because we bring others through with us. And again, we're being stewards of the earth and helping her transition as well.
Well, and the earth is our true mother, our only mother.
Yes. Yes.
We come through a physical body and are birthed into the third dimension, but when we decide to do that, the true mother is the earth.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about love and living, a mother's love is what keeps you able to survive. Mothers have this love that comes, their heart opens when they give birth. And it just is like a natural thing to care for your helpless child until they're able to care for themselves. So if you live in a space where you have an open heart and a heart-centered life instead of here, you live from the heart. When you get into the fifth dimension, if you've ever seen the show What Would You Do? Where there's a situation and they set people up to see if they'll react in a negative situation.
Yes.
Some people have so much spirit and so much love in them that they will step up and say something in those situations where other people would be like, oh, I'm not going to get involved, or I don't think I should say anything, or whatever. Some people say, no, you don't treat that child like that. It may not be my child, but I'm not going to stand over here and listen to you abuse your child in front of me. You
Yeah.
come from a place of compassion and love for other human beings. And so if you live in a heart-centered space, it has to be better because you're going to spread that. You're going to teach
Yeah.
others. It just becomes a natural thing to want to be in a space of love. Like there's nothing like your mother's love. There's nothing like a pat on the back saying you're doing a good job, or you're smart, or you're beautiful, or you're sweet, or whatever. If when you have that nurturing, it just you want to do that for others. You want to do it for your animals. You want to do it for um, other people, other people's animals. I mean, I find that it just spreads and spreads. And to get the collective to a place where they are waking up, and they wake up in love, and they wake up in a place where there is that much, like on the other side, I see it all the time when I'm talking to spirit. There's nothing but love. That's the only emotion that's on the other side. And I think what a beautiful, beautiful place it must be. I mean, people call it heaven. They have different names for it, or different ways of expressing it. But basically, all of the negative emotions that we experience here in these other dimensions are nothing compared to the love that you feel and the clarity you have about it. So I think that um, Gaia is in need of our help. And the more people that hear this cry from us, the earth is crying out. You can see it every day. You can see the imbalance. You can see the things that are off. And if we align ourselves in a loving place and we wake up, as many parts of us as we can wake up and help our fellow man, so to speak, wake up into the consciousness that life can be better. It can be beautiful. You can be strong. Love is a strong emotion. It doesn't make you weak. It to show love for others. It doesn't make you weak. To help others, it makes you strong. It's one of the strongest emotions we experience. So I just really hope that these lessons that we're learning the hard way are going to teach us not to be afraid, because the trauma has made people afraid. And when you're afraid, that's when you can be controlled. And we don't want to be controlled. We don't want to have a situation where we're not thinking for ourselves and acting on our own behalf. I mean, I came from the generation where, it was the hippies, and it was just everything was about love. Everything
Right.
was about no war. And we can get to that place. We can accomplish that. there was a huge movement of people in my generation, and somewhere along the way they dropped the ball. You know, they got afraid, or they went to organized religion and they were told how to think and things, and they just sort of drifted off from that movement. But I was so inspired by that happening. I thought that it was actually going to work. I felt like it was enough people in my generation to pull it off. And it's happened over and over, you know, in different groups of people over the centuries. And if you think we were talking about circles and whatever, um, all of the major geographical sites like Stonehenge and all of those are circles. Everything is spheres and circles, and they're formed in a circle, and they line up with the solstice, the winter and the summer solstice.
Yes.
So you can't, that can't be an accident. That can't just be by happenstance. There was a reason why they honored the seasons. There was a reason why things were in a circle. All of these things go back, everything they find, Göbekli Tepe, everything, you find circles.
Well, and typically it was honoring the seasons, and it was certainly honoring the earth and the flora and the fauna, but they were oftentimes also honoring the sun and
Well, and the
honoring.
energy that came from the earth in those places, there's the pyramids are strategically the center of the earth, and that's where the most energy is. And Egypt is just like phenomenal for that.
Right. And most of them are orchestrated around the sun in some way, which was also seen and is, another being. And so other planets as well, the Pleiades, as you mentioned. And it's just, I think I'm mentioning it because it's another example of what we're a little removed from, certainly collectively. Most of us are not spending a whole lot of time honoring the sun, but we're probably spending, as you were saying in the beginning, a good amount of time on our phones.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that you have to now allot, a whole bunch of time to the sun necessarily, but it's definitely food for thought. And I will say, in terms of like the solar flares, and when you go into a sacred circle, how about this? You can communicate with the earth, you can ask questions, you can speak to her. It's the same with the sun. It's the same with the spirit of fox, or the holly plant, or like there's a wisdom there, but there also can be a relationship that's reciprocal, and there's really like a magic to this interconnection. And it's about intention and focus. Once we start focusing in this way more, then that like amplifies in our life. Then we see the magic of it more. If we're on the other side, where we're fairly disconnected from all of this, it might not even, we might not be in a space of awareness of whether that's a good or bad thing, or it's affecting us. But it is affecting us. It's affecting, again, people may not have a conscious awareness. That's why it can be great to shine some light when possible. But it's affecting mental health. It's affecting disease and how that shows up for people. I mean, it does manifest in so many ways. So
Well, and with, like I mentioned before we started, you know, all of the light that's coming to the planet, the sun is our library, and that's like our Akash. That's where we have
yes,
information, and
yes,
it comes to us. And if we, if light workers, and I do believe that there are a multitude of way showers and light workers out there, if they
especially
realize
now, right?
they have a lot of light to work with, they need to
Yes.
get it while they can, and go to these sacred places or create them and get into the sun. And you don't have to damage your body by going into it for hours, but
Right.
a few minutes a day looking up and letting the sun get into your eyes and get into your brain and go into your body. um, it's healing. It's a healing
Ah,
experience. People
I
don't
think
realize.
Yeah, I've shared this, but in the mornings when I let out the dog, I go outside and then I have a little prayer that I do and I honor the directions and I start in the east.
Mhm.
And depending on what time it is, the sun is typically rising and it's also a time where it's less potent. So you don't maybe look directly at it depending on the time of year, et cetera. But you can look in that direction and you can absorb the healing energy of the sun. And I feel like, just like with our physical bodies, right? When we get up in the morning, we have like a surge of cortisol, like our hormones are set up in a way where we have a little more energy to hopefully, I mean, we could have an imbalance with this, but like hopefully to, kind of get us going. And so out there looking at the sun and being a recipient of that energy, but also, again, having this reciprocal relationship, it's like, it's such a strong energy and it's so awe inspiring, just like when you're looking at the sky and there's all the stars and everything. I mean, it's this huge star. So I feel like starting my day out with that, even if it's just a few minutes, it's this acknowledgement and connection. And
Oh,
like
it's
you said, yeah, in a deeper way with the Akasha and all of the power and wisdom that's there, you can really feel it and take it in. Part of my intention is, please fill me with the light. Yeah, I don't want to say that I need, maybe is not the best language, but like, please fill me with your light for my path and so that I can light the path of others throughout the day. And it's powerful.
yeah, and it's something that's been there. We take it for granted again, like where does it go when it sets in the evening? If I've watched a million sunsets, and I used to love to watch the sunrise. If you live in a place where you can see, you should actually make a trek down to a beach or something or a lakeside or whatever and wrap up in a blanket and watch the sun come up. It's
Wow.
majestic. It 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 you can't imagine a day without sunlight. Every morning I tell my cat, "Oh, here comes the daylight. Here comes
Right.
the sun."
Mhm.
And I look out and she looks out and it's kind of like she knows it's starting the day and we have another 24 hours to do something productive and helpful and loving, something that makes a difference. And I think that the sun is a beautiful a way to, that's one of the things that I've been a sun worshiper. I'm a Leo, so I'm a sun sign, and it just it fascinates me how, and I don't have our closing prayer with me. I was going to ask for you to close it today,
Okay.
when you're ready, and I forgot to pick it up when I got the computer, and I probably know it mostly by heart, but
Right.
um, maybe you can come up with something when you're ready.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so we have a few more minutes, and part of what is coming through, well, it's interesting you mentioned being a Leo and a sun sign, and so I'm a Capricorn and an earth sign. So I can feel the part of me that's like, rah, like I'm here for the earth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's coming through in this. But even all of these different things, I feel like with astrology or with numerology or even some of, I guess, like now we have things like the Enneagram or what's your life path, or like there's so many different ways to look at this, but it's all about connection. When you look into it, it's like, yes, it can light your path and give you clarity on like who you are and where you're going. But the connection is always within the system. And so this is, I don't think it's a tangent, but it's just like a different angle to what we've been discussing, where we see that in the natural world everywhere. So I think what I'm feeling is, if you do feel disconnected or separated in any way, or you're wanting to like connect and expand out more, I encourage with that sacred circle, yes, to have that at home. But there are, as you mentioned, it's been going on since the beginning of time, and there are always circles going on in different communities, and there is a powerful impact. I would say, not to just have your own practice. Yes, have your own practice every day, but with the solstices or the seasons or other things that really just resonate with you, getting in sacred circle with others. The other piece that's coming through is like, yeah, it's healing for us, but we take our actions day to day. And then when we get in circle, there's this energy healing and almost this quantum leap with the ripple effect of what happens within the ritual and the ceremony. And I believe that that has carried humanity through since the beginning of time, whenever the heck we got here. Probably like interbred with aliens and like all of
Well,
that,
what we've
right?
talked about
That's another topic.
in the past when we had, when you do a circle and you hear what others think and what they feel and how they add to this knowledge that we all have, we teach each other,
Yes.
and I always say at the end of the class, I learn as much as I teach. Because if you just listen to what other people know and what other people think and what they feel, we don't have to all think the same way. We don't have to all be the same or take the same action. But if it's something you share, then everybody has a possibility of integrating those bits of knowledge into their being and or to a practice, but you can learn from someone something that you never thought of. You think I've thought of this and I've thought of that and I'm doing this and it's ritual or it's habit or however you look at it. But someone will say something and it's so beautiful, just a poem or a line from a song or there's a song that Willie Nelson sings and it was Chris Christopherson wrote it and it's a moment of forever. Beautiful song. And it
Mm,
says, I'm so glad I had a chance to dance with you in
yeah.
a moment of forever. And it just touches me so much because a person can have a thought that they never share. If they get in a group like that and they share that, and then other people, you tell your children that, or you tell a friend that, or something, it brings this loving energy to where they're not afraid to express things. And if they do that in a group that's accepting and loving and sharing, I just think it's the best way. I think it's the best way for people to come together.
Well, and you can experience miracles in these circles, and the energy palpably shifts. I mean, there is so much documentation of this also, and like you said, I mean, there's pretty good research on meditation and collective meditation and how that impacts the energy, let's say, of an environment. I don't know how, I doubt there's a ton of like double blind research on how ritual and ceremony impacts things, but we have the evidence of our experiences. So I can say from the ones I've joined over the years, I mean, I have just experienced pure miraculousness in these circles with others, and so grateful for what I've learned, for what I've experienced, but also I mean, you can read it in stories, you can listen to it from other teachers. So many people have the accounts of, we had a collective circle, for example, and our intention was to shift the pollution. This was one, Drinvalo, had a lot of focus on this and in a certain area. And at one point, if I'm remembering correctly, they were in New Mexico or Arizona, and it was specific areas. And so circle groups of people all holding the intention, meditating. And in fact, the pollution, decreased. They had these like monitors that would monitor the pollution, and significantly, it almost completely reversed in these areas, based on this energy. So that quantum leap piece, and what you're saying too, just the ripple effect through lives, how whatever happens in these circles touches so many people. It is just so beautiful and so worth it.
Well, and it's even though it's individual, it becomes If someone does what you've done and it becomes their practice and it works for them, it really doesn't matter if you ever see the end
Right.
result. It's like planting a tree and never sitting under the shade of it, how they, that premise, it's do good and do good things, and it can't harm. It's like when the doctors take an oath to do no harm, when if we just do good things and think good thoughts, we're going to raise the consciousness. And when people start to awaken, the whole idea of this dimensional shift is to raise the consciousness of humanity and to wake people up.
Yes.
So when you start seeing it, and you don't criticize people because they can't do it as quickly or they don't get it right away. This trauma that we experienced has put us in a place of numbness, because the fear was so intense. When you go through that, it's like post-traumatic stress syndrome. When you go through something, you can't imagine that that experience changes you to such a degree, but you are changed. And when we had that trauma and all of this cataclysmic, events on the planet, there's a phobia, there's like a fear that people have that's maybe not founded, not really justified in the
Right.
immediate view, but it's there. And so, if you can alleviate one person from suffering through that, or if you can't tell them it's not there because to them it's real, it feels real. So, just to share goodness and how you look at things and try to get people to look at it maybe from a different perspective. It's just like when you look at a mountain, when you stand too close, you can't see the top. If you back away or you move around, you see things differently. So no matter how we do it, if everybody just thinks of one good thing a day that they can do, that make a phone call, cheer somebody up. I have a friend that just lost her husband, and I told her, you don't have to have a reason to call me. If you want to talk, just call me. And it
Yeah.
doesn't have to have a conclusion or any kind of a, need. That if she just wants to talk, I'm here for her.
Hmm.
And that's just how it has to be. We have to be more loving, more caring, more compassionate, and not judgmental, because there should not be right and wrong. It's just what people choose to do. We don't have a right to say if it's right or wrong. I don't think, anyway. You know.
Right. Well, and there's no like workaround here, right? Like bringing it back to the beginning of like grounding into the 3D and beyond. We're not getting to four, five, six, seventh dimensions or experiencing these spaces of consciousness, etc., if we're not grounded where we are in the 3D.
Well, and when you feel the connection, like I said earlier, the iron ore core of this planet is
Yes.
where we are anchored. And then we go out all the way into the stars. And
Yes.
everything that happens in between, these quantum leaps that we take, and be adventurous and go for it, infinity and beyond, like, why not?
Yes.
And what do we have to lose? None of us are getting out of this place without some kind of an event, and on the other side, there's so much freedom and clarity, and you can do all of these things without any kind of blockage. You can just spread love everywhere when you're on the
Hmm.
other side, but when we incarnate here and we choose to come here, when people say, what is your purpose or what is my purpose? Life. It's life.
Right. Right.
Live your life.
I'd love to end on that. I feel like that's perfect. I mean, if you have any closing thoughts, of
So
course.
that's how I feel. And I feel like you don't have to have a specific doctrine or promise or a contract or anything. It's living, you know, just the purpose of life is to live life,
Mm,
be fully alive and aware and here, be here, just be here.
yes, thank you for that. So, thank you to everyone who's tuning in, joining us. We'd love to hear from you. We will check the comments And we look forward to tuning in again next month in February, not too far from now. We'll go ahead and close just gently for a moment, maybe wherever you are, closing your eyes, bringing the focus and awareness to the sun. It's coming back to that and to the light. And so we'll close honoring the light of the sun and the light in our lives. Can we be in this light? May we be in this light, and may it have a ripple effect to all those, to everyone and everything around us. Aho.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.